Hey, Seminole Nation, what's going on? It's CJ Wilson here with DoakTalk. Hope you guys had an amazing, great weekend. Like I stated before, we're in the midst of our pre-spring positional breakdowns. And for today's topic, we're going to jump into the wide receiver group. This is going to be an interesting group going into spring practice. A lot of changes, a lot of new faces within the receiver room. Trying to bounce back after a very, like I stated, underperforming year overall, a bad year overall, just from not FSU standards, but just from a college football standpoint as far as just the offensive production. But again, this is the year 2025. We have a new offensive coordinator in Gus Malzahn, new positional coaches as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. And of course, with this positional coach, receiver coach, we have Ice Harris from UCF, as you guys know, the Miami legend from Miami, Florida. Big time family in Miami as far as the Harris family. But nonetheless, we're going to jump into this new receiver room for FSU and try to make some sense of it leading into spring practice and kind of give an outside glance of what to expect going into practice. But before we get started, make sure you guys like this video and hit that subscribe button. Again, go ahead and like this video. It takes 2 seconds. And subscribe to the Dope Talk community if you haven't already. All things covering FSU. We got you guys covered, whether it's interviews, recruiting news, current player news, coaching changes, whatever it may be. We're going to take care of you guys as far as all things covering FSU. Tap in with Dope Talk. All right, guys, let's go ahead and jump right into it. And like I stated, this is going to be a kind of overhauled receiver room for FSU. A lot of new faces. Had to address the room after a disappointing 2024 season, with some expectations and things like that across the board. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. The first name I want to talk about is Duce Robinson, the transfer receiver from USC. Duce was one of the top receivers within the transfer portal, 6'6", 220 pounds, former five-star. Played 2 years at USC, did a rare shirt, pretty much went to USC and started playing ball out of the gate. In his 2 years, he's had 747 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns overall. He is the son of a former FSU receiver, Dominique Robinson. He's an uber athletic receiver at 6'6", 220 pounds. He's a guy that can he's a game changer for FSU. He could be a matchup nightmare. Like I said, he's 6'6", 220, but he moves more so like I'm not gonna say like a smaller guy, but he moves very well for his frame, carry his weight very well, can get downfield, and once he catches the ball, he's a threat to take it to the house. He's uber athletic, like I stated, can make guys miss in space. He's not a guy that's just going to catch it and be a possession type of receiver. He is a guy that once he gets his hands on the football, he's a threat due to his size and speed and just overall athleticism. He's a threat to make a big play and make a game-changing play once the ball is in his hands. So really good battle for FSU. Ended up beating out, I want to say, Arizona State and a few others for Duce Robinson's services from the West Coast. It's great to have this legacy kid back home. I'm really excited about Duce. He has 2 years left for eligibility. Like I said, he went to USC and Lincoln Riley, and he pretty much played right off the rip for those guys and made a lot of plays for him. So it's going to be exciting to see what he could do within this FSU offense and how Gus Malzahn can, scheme things open and what the plan is for Duce Robinson. Moving on to the second receiver that FSU addressed in the transfer portal, Squirrel White. Dynamic playmaker, played 3 years at the University of Tennessee before transferring over to FSU. Explosive. During his 3 years, had over 1,600 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. During his sophomore campaign at Tennessee, had 67 catches for over 800 yards and 2 touchdowns. Had around 400 yards his junior year. Did suffer some injuries this past year for the University of Tennessee. But what Squirrel brings to the table is just speed, and uber explosion. I mean, this is a guy that could take he's a guy to take the top off of defense. He could be a deep ball threat, Also, he's the guy that can turn something into nothing. When I say turn something into nothing, FSU likes to utilize the screen game, and I'm pretty sure Gus Malzahn is going to implement that as well within his new offense. Squirrel is a guy that can pretty much take a screen pass that's typically what you expect, a 6 or 7 yard gain, and he can turn that to a 50 to 60 yard game and take it to the house for a touchdown. Like I said, he has dynamic speed, one of the fastest players in college football. It's going to probably be one of the fastest, but I probably want to be one of the fastest. He is one of the fastest players on FSU roster. He brings the element of speed that FSU really hasn't had in the receiver room in a long time. When I say element of speed, we've had fast guys, but guys that play fast, that can do something with the ball in their hands and things like that, to where on the field, once they catch the ball or have the ball in their hands, period, yeah, that guy is special. He has game-breaking speed. Mike Norvell stated in regards to the acquisitions of Duce Robinson and Squirrel White, those guys were, and this is a direct quote, absolute home runs as far as in the transfer portal. They have been working out pretty much day and night with new quarterback Thomas Castellano, trying to get timing down, familiarity, and things like that. So really excited what Squirrel White brings to the table. I really think him and Duce Robinson complement each other very well. Moving on to the next receiver that FSU newly acquired receiver that FSU got coming in for spring practice in the winter semester. Jordan Scott, another big body receiver, standing at 6'7", 215 pounds. Jordan Scott was the number one receiver out of the JUCO ranks. FSU ended up flipping Jordan Scott from Kenny Dillingham in Arizona State. This is like I said, a big body receiver, and a lot of people kind of compare him to Johnny Wilson and things like that due to the sheer size. But just watching his film and the type of playmaker he is, and don't take this the wrong way as far as Johnny. If you guys, well, DoakTalk wasn't going on back then. If you guys remember, I was on the previous podcast called "A Roll Up" in, I want to say 2022, going to the 2022 season. I was at the first spring practice for FSU and kind of get this, and I saw Johnny Wilson in person. And prior to that, it was a lot of tight end talks and things like that. And looking at Johnny run routes and going through practice drills, like, nah, this isn't a receiver. This kid moves pretty fluid. He could get in and out of his breaks and things like that. He's not a tight end. He's not stiff and things along those lines. He's a big body receiver that can move pretty well. Well, I say that to say this. I think Jordan Scott is he has more wiggle than Johnny Wilson. He can move better than Johnny Wilson. He can get in and out of his breaks better than Johnny Wilson. Standing at 6'7", he's an explosive receiver, man, with I want to say small guy receiver traits, but he gets in and out of his breaks for a guy that is 6'7", 215 pounds. He gets in and out of his breaks, make cuts very effortless, and it's going to pay dividends for him. And it's going to be a huge advantage for him due to his sheer size. So I'm really excited what Jordan Scott brings to the table, along with Duce Robinson and Squirrel. He's been working out with Thomas as well, trying to get timing down over the winter and things like that as far as running routes, get the familiarity down. So I'm really excited what Jordan Scott brings to the table. He was the number one JUCO receiver in the country, 6'7", 215 pounds. Like I said, a lot of people want to have Johnny Wilson comparisons, but he may be a little bit more. He moves a little. He moves a little better than Johnny Wilson, runs routes better than Johnny Wilson, gets in and out of his breaks better than Johnny Wilson. Just overall, at 6'7", 215 pounds, he doesn't move like a 6'7", 215-pound receiver. So it's going to be interesting to see how Jordan Scott transitions to FSU and what type of impact he can have in spring practice. All right, this is a receiver that has to pretty much put up or shut up, and that's Hykeem Williams. As you guys know, he is a former five-star receiver going into his third year at FSU. Has shown some flashes in some games, and then there's other times where you just put your head down in disappointment because a drop pass, a route that isn't ran fully, whatever it may be. Just inconsistencies from Hykeem Williams, and I really think this is a spring practice that he has to assert himself and pretty much dominate in my regards and make players in spring just to show that I do have the potential. Well, I do have the potential. Potential only goes so far after you got to actually show it. Not necessarily I have the potential, but that potential is going to meet opportunity. When the opportunity and potential meets, it's time to go ahead and put output and have the production. So we're going to see if Hykeem Williams steps up to the plate and make a name for himself in the spring practice and try to entrench himself within the starting lineup or just in the rotation regardless. Like I said, former five-star receiver going into year 3, 6'4", 215 pounds. From an athletic standpoint, he has it all there, but just putting it together as far as a complete receiver has been a struggle thus far from Hykeem Williams. We'll see how the new receiver change as well, too, with Ice Harris helps Hykeem as far as his development. But this is a very important spring for Hykeem Williams. In my opinion, the cream rise to the crop. You can either rise or you can sink. This is going to be very key as far as Hykeem. We'll see what type of character he has in regards to the competition in that nature and rising to the top and showing his potential and pulling out, what he has in him and, showing that five-star capabilities that we all thought we were getting once he committed to FSU over Texas A&M, Miami, Florida, et cetera, University of Georgia as well, too. So, again, Hykeem Williams it's going to be a very important spring for Hykeem Williams. If it doesn't go so well, he could be a guy that could test the waters in the spring transfer portal if it doesn't go his way as far as making plays and things like that. FSU brought in some receivers that they want that feel like they want to come in and play. So the reps are limited. We'll see who's going to rise to the crop. And Hykeem Williams is one of those receivers that has to prove it within this spring practice in order to get those reps going into fall camp. Jaylen Brown is another receiver that needs to prove for FSU. Redshirt sophomore for FSU, transfer from LSU, one of the fastest players on the roster as well from the receiver standpoint. But he hasn't played fast. It looks like he's doing a lot of thinking when running his routes. You don't really see the natural speed for Jaylen Brown. And be quite honest with you, in certain situations, he just looked timid, wasn't aggressive in regards to running his routes or making a play once the ball is in his hands. It was a lot of frustration for Jaylen Brown as well too, for the 2024 season. Just things not really going his way from a playing standpoint, the team overall, win record standpoint, and just things like that. So everyone has a fresh slate going into this season. To be honest with you, I thought Jaylen Brown would be a candidate for the transfer portal in the winter. Nonetheless, he stuck with FSU. So this is going to be a key spring for Jaylen Brown as well as he tries to entrench himself within the lineup and get some reps and make some plays. So it's going to be a big spring for Jaylen Brown. I think it's going to be a sink or a swim or sink type of situation for Jaylen Brown. He's going to rise up to the crop and make some plays and get some reps for this 2025 season, get within the lineup, or he can kind of be passed by the wayside and things like that, and kind of drop below the depth chart and possibly be below the depth chart and just stay there, or in the transfer portal after spring practice once he read the room a little bit and realize what playing time is available and what could be limited for him. So again, the opportunity is there. We'll see what Jaylen Brown does with the opportunity, whether he takes it by the boot, or takes the bull by the horns and takes advantage of it, or lets it go wayside and then let reps pass him by other receivers. LaWayne McCoy is another receiver that the staff is pretty high on. 6'1", 176 pounds, true sophomore, played sparingly for FSU in the 2024 season. He was the main punt returner for FSU once Jalen Lucas got hurt. I wasn't really a fan of LaWayne McCoy as a punt returner, let a lot of balls hit the ground and things like that, but we're not talking about returning kicks. We're talking about pure receiver. The coaching staff is pretty high on him, what he brings to the table. I don't really want to judge a true freshman or any receiver last year based off what they did. Kind of nobody on offense based off what they did. I want to give him a new slate because it was, like I said, it was bad all around. But let alone a true freshman with limited reps. So we'll see what LaWayne McCoy does going into a sophomore year. This staff is pretty high on him. Mike Norvell loves the kid. We'll see if he can take the next step and be a big-time playmaker for FSU. Another kid that's going to a sophomore campaign for FSU has been making a lot of plays on the baseball diamond. I'm pretty high on this kid, and that's B.J. Gibson. B.J. Gibson played sparingly for FSU last year. I think he took a red shirt, returned some punts. I want to say the game against Charleston Southern, and nonetheless, I know it was Charleston Southern, but him returning punts looked a little different than LaWayne McCoy. He was actually trying to field the punts and make something shake after the punt. In my opinion, he could have been the number one punt returner in replace of Jalen Lucas once he got hurt last year, but that's neither here or there. But going into this 2025 season, I'm really high on what BJ Gibson can do. Uber athletic. He's 6 foot, 190 pounds. He's well built, kind of, I don't want to say compact, but he's well built. He has a muscular build, and that kind of goes to his baseball traces. He's playing on the diamond right now for Link Jarrett and FSU and making a lot of plays for FSU. So shout out to BJ Gibson. Two-sport athlete. We'll see how he can juggle both sports going into spring practice, but he is a kid to keep an eye on, as I feel like he has a lot of potential. Speaking of more younger receivers, this kid I really like this kid. True freshman, should be in high school right now. Jayvan Boggs ended up flipping to FSU down the stretch from UCF. As you guys know, he was committed to Gus Malzahn and the wide receiver coach, Tim Ice Harris. Ended up flipping him from UCF. He ended up enrolling to FSU. If you guys haven't heard Jayvan Boggs' name within the 2024 recruiting cycle, just high school football around in Florida, you wasn't paying attention. This guy was a big-time athlete in the state of Florida, one of the best receivers in the state of Florida. From a production standpoint, he was the best receiver in the state of Florida. Ended up breaking the state record for most receiving yards in the game in the playoffs. I want to say the semifinals of the playoffs. If I'm mistaken, my apologies, Coco. But ended up winning. I'm sorry, not winning. Ended up breaking the record with 378 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. That's right, you heard me right. This kid had 378 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns within one game. in the playoffs, a big time game at that. So when the stakes were the highest, he showed up the most. Overall, for a senior year, he had 99 catches, 2,133 yards, and 24 touchdowns. Let me read that again, just in case you guys didn't hear me correctly or you thought I was, whatever you were doing during that time frame when I mentioned these numbers, because it's kind of eye popping and alarming. So 99 catches, over 2,000 receiving yards, and 24 touchdowns. Going back to 2023, he won the Mr. Florida Award, which is the most prestigious award in the state of Florida. And going to the 2023 season, he had 1,500 receiving yards and 24 touchdowns as well. He's a winner, three-time state champion at Cocoa, big-time program in Florida. So again, this guy is a three-time state champion, produced on the field, ended up breaking all-time state records, and that's pretty big within the state of Florida. So I'm very high on Jayvan Boggs. He's also been working out with Thomas Castellano and the other receivers. This is a kid that isn't really coming. He's not coming to FSU to sit on the bench. He's coming to play and make some plays. So it's going to be interesting to see how he fits in within his new receiver room with all his uber talents and things like that, how he could transition from coming from the high school ranks to the college ranks. I think Jayvan Boggs is a safe bet to be a playmaker for FSU. If not in the immediate future, in the future for sure. This is an interesting one. And Makai Dansley, as you guys know, he is the all-world track runner for FSU. 6'1", 185 pounds. He was a true freshman last year. He came in as a running back and played running back last year for FSU. But he's now transitioning to the receiver position, going to this 2025 year. He's in the midst of running track for FSU, and even though the season is young, he's doing all-time stuff for FSU in his first year on the track field, which is unheard of. Makai Dansley, he ended up breaking, when I say breaking the FSU record, but he is third all-time for FSU in regards to running the 400-meter dash. Kai ended up running a 46.14 for FSU in the 400 meters. And like I said, that is third all-time in FSU history. A 46.1 in the 400 meters. Third all-time in FSU history. I keep saying that because you're talking about a rich tradition and program of elite track runners at FSU. We have a true freshman here that's third all-time already. So you can kind of put two and two together and can, I guess, predict, so to speak, that at a certain point in time, Makai Dansley will be the record holder for FSU in the 400-meter dash. So you have all-world speed on the football field for FSU. And Makai is from Tallahassee, Florida, played at Florida High. I've had the pleasure of watching this kid play high school football. He's an absolute baller, in my opinion. So I think he could be a interesting playmaker for FSU in regards to how we use his skill set and utilize his speed. It's going to be interesting to see what type of packages that Gus Malzahn could put together for Makai Dansley. But he's transitioning from running back position to the receiver position. We'll see how that translates. He's 6'1", 185 pounds. So he already has great size for the position, and he has the elite speed. We'll see if that could translate to production. So Makai Dansley is the guy that I want to watch out for as far as being a big-time playmaker for FSU, transitioning from the running back position to the receiver position. This next receiver, probably has the most upside in the room, and that's Elijah Moore. Big-time playmaker, as you guys know. FSU ended up flipping Elijah, well, not necessarily flipping Elijah Moore, but beating out Ohio State for the commitment for Elijah Moore. And once he got on campus over the summer, the kid was turning heads, making plays left and right. A lot of circus catches, so to speak, a lot of uber athletic plays that just catches your attention. 6'4", 204 pounds. I really want to see what Elijah Moore, how he not necessarily transitions, but going from his freshman year to a sophomore year, being acclimated on campus, being in the weight room, the strength and conditioning program, seeing how college is and overall how FSU program runs. Now I'm interested to see him taking that next jump and being a consistent playmaker for FSU. When I say a consistent playmaker, you can make a play, a splash play and things like that. But once you consistently do all the things that you need to consistently do all the things that you need to do in order to be on the field. And I say consistently do all the things you need to do, running the right route, running full speed from the mental standpoint, knowing the play, knowing where you should be breaking and things like that. All of that goes into being a consistent playmaker. You can win reps sparingly, but what separates a lot of guys in college is the consistency, going over, do it over and over and over again. And that's the one thing I want to see from Elijah Moore is the consistent aspect going into pretty much matching the consistency with the uber athleticism, great hands, and things like that, matching the consistency with the talent, and more time and more reps usually helps that. So it's going to be interesting to see what Elijah Moore becomes going into the spring practice. This is a kid I'm very, very high on, a big time playmaker. We'll see how he does going into, like I said, this spring practice with a new offensive coordinator and a new receiver coach and pretty much a fresh start. Tayshawn Gesley, he's another true freshman at FSU, ended up recruiting for the 2025 recruiting cycle. 6'4", 215-pound kid from Jacksonville, Florida. Ended up flipping him down the stretch from the University of Florida. He's going to have a say as well in regards to spring practice. And lastly, Camden Fryer going into year 2 of the program, 6 foot, 192-pound freshman. This is a kid that can run, well, redshirt freshman rather. This is a kid that can run pretty well, can run pretty good as well too. A lot of speed with Camden Fryer. We'll see if he could crack the lineup and try to make a namesake as far as, making plays and getting to the lineup for FSU. It's a lot of talent within the receiver room. I'm very excited to see how it translates and which guy steps up and rise to the crop coming to spring practice. Like I said, I went over a lot of guys. It's going to be a lot of competition, but there's only one ball and only, the majority, to be real with you, probably like 4 receivers that'll be in the rotation consistently. Maybe I'd say 5 to 6 receivers that'll be in rotation consistently, with maybe 3 to 4 that'll be getting the main reps. We'll see which guy is hungry enough to go ahead and snatch those reps. But make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. We have the offensive line pre-position or pre-spring positional breakdown coming pretty soon. Again, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Go Noles.